friends, colleagues, family, and of course for me, to receive something as the inaugural recipient of a magnificent award is truly a special moment and day in my life. So thank you again, all of you, for being here and for the entire organization for making this day special. Jack and Blake and all the organizing committee, Sandy, everybody that's made it so wonderful for me. And actually, I think I speak for a lot of people. This has been a great meeting. Beautifully done, well organized, great talks. I feel very privileged to be a small part of it. So thank you for doing all the things that you've done to make the meeting so very successful. So, let me start at the beginning. I'm in my office, I'm working in May or April, and I get an unexpected email, and it's from Jack and Blake. And the email says, well, you've been nominated to receive this special award. And I look at it and I read it and I go, is that me? Very unexpected. And so I'm thinking, oh gosh, if I get this wonderful award, and I'm kind of getting a little excited and I'm getting a little nervous. And I'm thinking, I don't know if I have anything significant to say that's so meaningful. So I contact Blake. And I said, Blake, in the email, I said, Blake, I appreciate so much the chance to do this, but I'm also nervous and I'm not sure what I should say. So Blake very kindly and quickly responds back. He says, oh, it's very easy. Talk about you. Talk about what your thoughts are, what your life's been like, and you'll find it's not a hard thing at all, it's not difficult, it's quite easy. Then he says, I'll help you. I'll send you a link where Eric Donenfeld, I think everybody knows Eric Donenfeld. Eric Donenfeld gives a talk, just like this, a visionary talk, at the Caribbean Eye meeting, where he talks about himself. So of course I'm immediately on the link, open it up, and sure enough, there's talking. And he starts out his talk, he says, I've given a lot of lectures. I've given a lot of talks. I've been into a lot of places. But this is the hardest lecture. So you can see how nervous I get. I'm going to immediately calm down. So, before I share my story, let's talk a little bit about some ophthalmic visionaries, and there are lots of them. There's some wonderful names I think everybody here would recognize. Famous names, Charlie Kellman, Dick Lindstrom, Ike Ahmed, Cornelius Binkhorst, Dutchman, Garrett Mellis, Dutchman, Andy Corley, Herb Stewart. Some of you know these people, Jim Gills, and on and on. So what makes these people special? Is it any one trait? No, it's a series and a combination of traits. They're all, of course, hardworking. They have imagination, they have chutzpah, they have judgment, they have insight, wisdom, and foresight. So they're a combination of traits that make them special. Now we know some of them have faced very difficult times in our profession with doubt and controversy. And they have gone on from being buccaneers to being pioneers. So I've enjoyed the experience of getting ready for the talk because I had to really force myself to think, okay, what really am I trying to accomplish and what have I done, etc. So my preparation was quite helpful to me to prepare for today. Now, I've named this talk Cows, Cataracts, Castles, and Kids. Now, it's more than an alliteration, and I know it's a bit of a silly title, but I hope when I'm finished, you all will understand how this title has defined my career. I'm a physician. We're all physicians. I love being a physician and being able to help and treat patients and do surgery. But I've also enjoyed doing so many other things, along with being an ophthalmologist. It's a short life. And we physicians sometimes work pretty darn hard, maybe too hard. But sometimes we can combine work, hobbies, life, and intertwine them. So that's what I'd like to tell you about. My story picks up in the Netherlands in 1951, when we, as a family, left the Netherlands and we came to Canada. We immigrated. We were immigrants, of course. Everything was new. Language, food, culture, school. A lot of things we had to learn, but even with those things, my mother and father never drifted or lost sight of their values, and those core values were ingrained into us children, and they've shaped my life and my career. My father broke the mold as an immigrant. He broke the mold for his family. He made a brave choice of leaving a wonderful job. He was a mayor. He had a good job in a country. He had a future. He left his friends, left his status, and he came to Canada, which meant he was a man of adventure, a imagination, courage, and daring. So what motivated him to leave? His family was all important. He told me that he wanted to have a better future for his sons. There were no daughters. In the new country, Holland was getting bureaucratic. The country was getting overcrowded. Land was scarce. But he also let it slip later on that the other reason he didn't tell people at the time was he was concerned, it was a Cold War time, that the Russians were going to invade Europe. So that was another factor for him. So my father was old school. He taught us the values of hard work, be ambitious, get good grades, be accountable, keep your nose clean. And he made those values get ingrained into us. For me, one of the greatest teachers of my life was not a person. It was the experience of having a paper route, a 12-year-old. I learned what it was like to be out in very bad weather. I learned how to go to houses to collect money, how to read people, and how I learned some were kind and some were not so kind. So I learned a lot. At that time, I was starting to realize I had to be, in a way, a small business person. I was a bit of an entrepreneur, and I didn't even realize it at the time. So picking tomatoes, I learned the consequences of my actions. I was fired from a job. And we were fired from a job because at the end of the summer, we were picking tomatoes in Canada, a bunch of us, four or five of us, and we were starting to throw some tomatoes in a very nice, soft, gentle way at each other. And it kind of got out of hand. And we started to, we were really firing these tomatoes right across each other. We were having a good time. Of course, tomatoes are soft, they're round, and they splatter, and they leave a great red color over here. We were having a good time. All of a sudden, suddenly there's a screaming voice, "Stop, you're all fired, go home." And of course, it was the farmer. He had come out, he had seen us, and he fired us right then on the spot. Fair enough, so I go home. I have to explain this to my father. And my father says, you learned two things today. You learned the consequences for what you did. When you got fired, you had consequences, you got fired. And you've cost that farmer and his family some of his livelihood. So that stuck with me. That was an important lesson that I learned. As Jack mentioned, I was sports. I did a lot of stuff in sports. I was all the time doing things with athletics. Very privileged to be able to be on a basketball team. We became Canadian champions, and I was an All-Canadian, as you mentioned. And I had the privilege of being invited to play in the 1968 Summer Olympics in Mexico City. That was an honor for me. So sports was a big deal. Sports also taught me, besides things like winning and losing, sportsmanship, etc., we all learned that in sports, taught me that to be at the very top, you have to really sacrifice. It took a lot to get to that level, and that lesson has stuck with me for a long time. Forever. So I said I was going to talk about cows, cataracts, castles, and kids. So let's see how cows fit in. Here's a life lesson I'll never forget, and it's about cows. It's 1977. At the age of 60, my father, very much an optimist, always positive, had an idea. Now, he didn't believe in stocks or bonds, but he believed in livestock. So he came from the farm, he loved the idea of farming, and he said, gee, why don't I see if I just buy a farm and maybe start doing some things that might be very beneficial? So he had some savings, he bought one farm, then he bought another farm, and he started raising cows. Soon one cow led to 10 cows, led to hundreds of cows. And he realized the value of exporting high-quality dairy cows to the Middle East, specifically Iran. And he had a contract with the government of Iran to import cows into Iran. So far, so good. The family was well off, and becoming well off financially, and things were doing well when something happened. It was 1978. You can see the headlines. Things were changing. Iran was in turmoil. And suddenly, all the borders for trade and business were shut down. My dad was wiped out. It was a difficult time. He quickly got up and said, you know what, this is terrible. I'm wiped out. But, he said, it's time to start again. He got up, he went back back into business. He began to rebuild it, and he started afresh at the age of 60. Unfortunately, for all the family, Dad developed cancer and died 5 years later. I miss him today, but I also know he would have started his next business and it would have been a great success. My dad sort of lived the experience that the famous football coach Vince Lombardi said after he retired. A reporter came to him and said, "Coach, what was the most disappointing game that you ever lost?" To the astonishment of the reporters, Vince Lombardi says, "Oh, I never once lost a football game, but sometimes I ran out of time before I could win."